Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Depressed Us. This is Zane Simon. I am joined by Phil McKenzie and Connor Rebish, all of us from BloodyElbow.com. We are here because it is not a UFC week, and as it is not a UFC week, we need to find a way to fill our dead-end lives. And what better way is there than watching the worst MMA fights we can possibly find?
What other option than to punish ourselves for so desperately hoping that it was a UFC week?
Yes, exactly. Like monks devoted to the worship of all things punchy, we must flagellate ourselves.
We've got a great logo for the MMA Depressed Us, but maybe we should ask June to just make it a man in an affliction shirt flagellating himself.
That may be our new logo, our new logo idea. I'm with it. So we are here this week to watch a fight that I barely remember, but I am assured will be bad. And that is Tim Sylvia versus Andre Arlovski 3 from UFC 61. And having seen other Tim Sylvia versus Andre Arlovski fights, I'm relatively I have a good feeling about this just being terrible.
The other two were weird enough to perhaps qualify as good bad.
Yeah.
This one is absolutely a disappointment.
The other three. This is
true.
Fight 3 of 4.
The fourth one I wouldn't even call good bad. The fourth one was entertaining in just that it was a completely one-sided beatdown.
Yes. So we're gonna
followed by a weird ass soccer kick, if I recall, which ended up in there was an NC, right? Or a DQ.
Yeah. Well, Arlovski forgot to send a sealed letter of request to the Athletic Commission to request approval for kicking Tim Sylvia when he was down, and so therefore it was ruled illegal.
Which I think is actually just the perfect way a fight like that should go. If you're going to book a shit show fight, then having a shit show ending is exactly how it needs to happen.
It was like in K1, they had like Buakaw and Overeem. And they're like, okay, we got to cut down on this clinching. And it made sense. And ONE FC, that was their moment. They're like, we got to have soccer kicks or not have soccer kicks because that was a complete shit show.
Beautiful. So we're going to be watching Tim Sylvia versus Andre Arlovski 3. And at UFC 61.
That's our final. That's our main event. That's our big disappointment.
That's our big disappointment. Before that, we will watch Kongo versus Matt Mitrione. This is this week's bad fight. As always, heavyweight is a font of inspiration when it comes to bad fights.
Always.
And then to open the show, we will be watching a true classic of good, bad, awesome fightness. Matt Riddle versus Sean Pimp Daddy Pierson at UFC 124.
Maybe the most jiffed good bad fight ever, aside from Fry Takayama.
Maybe. So, Phil, first, since I did my big intro, and since Connor very in his way cut me off midway through it, Phil, what are your thoughts on this week's lineup?
I mean, we got the super weird. Well, I think Tim Sylvia, we got his like, this was when we really realized his ability to just suck the life out of fights, and not just out of fights, but out of fighters. Because, like,
you're saying that Tim
I don't think Andre Arlovski
a big oversized, slightly weebly vampire.
Yeah. Like, I don't think, like, Arlovski, like, afterwards, like, he struggled to get on track for ages. Like, he completely destroyed, like, Brandon Vera. Like, he could just bore people. Like, people never recovered from, like, the shit shows that were Tim Sylvia fights. But, yeah, like, Sean Pierce, like, Mitrione Kongo is, as I recall, just a classic Kongo performance. Like, this is a man who has, like, short grabbing and nut strikes down to an art form. And Sean Riddle Pierson, like I said, one of the best, maybe the best, one of the greatest like bad fights in UFC history, modern UFC history for sure.
I can already tell how much of the big disappointment I'm going to now spend about talking about Tim Sylvia being a vampire because I find that idea to be very fascinating. And I want to point out that he's not the kind of vampire who needs to bite you. He's more like a Skyrim vampire who like casts a spell on you to drain your life energy.
Okay.
We're about to see Andrei Arlovski. What I'm saying, we're about to see Andrei Arlovski contract porphyric hemophilia in a fight with Tim Sylvia.
Not to stop you there, although Arlovski might be an actual classic vampire.
He could be.
Just from the way he looks.
Got the fangs.
And he's still like got this sort of beautiful agelessness to him that he hasn't really changed in a decade.
Except the nose.
I love that you went to the Skyrim reference there rather than the fact that like there is actually that concept just exists in the regular world as the psychic vampire. Like,
oh, I've never even heard of that.
Never heard of psychic vampirism?
No, we can talk about it during the fight though. We can.
Okay.
I want to hear you extol on the history of psychic vampires later.
I can't get into the history too deep, but I can at least tell you about the concept since your go-to was Skyrim on that idea.
my go-to is so much less cultured than Zane's.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's very much your kind of go-to.
I get it.
Yeah.
So shall we start? Matt Riddle,
Yeah,
Sean Pierson?
we're gonna get this show on the road since we have so much show and so little road.
So much suffering to endure and so little time in which to endure it.
Exactly. So to start us off with Matt Riddle versus Sean Pierson, our high note before an evening of low notes, or afternoon as it is, and we will start in 3, 2, 1, go. Now, I feel like an asshole because I already realized that I forgot to tell people, if you're watching with us at home, we're doing this all on Fight Pass, and we're queuing this up with Fight Pass videos. So you go, you find the fight on Fight Pass, you click go, and we say go, you will be there right with us all the way through. So if you're already delayed, then Connor will if we've already screwed you over, then Connor will try and remember to count down into the opening of round 1, and you can sync up then.
Is this
Italy reminds me of Sage Northcutt, like a weird broed out, like I can't figure out who he's like been hiding. Like normally, like in these kind of situations, it's like he's a hybrid of him and someone else, and I can't figure out who the other person is.
Sage Northcutt if he discovered weed in college? Yeah, that kind of makes sense. This, by the way, is a fight which is going to make a fairly average fighter in Sean Pierson look like the greatest boxer in MMA history, which is what makes this fight so much fun. Ooh, we don't even get a walkout. We get a quick start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta think that in this case, Matt Riddle is sort of like, it's like if Sage Northcutt were in a surfer movie, then Matt Riddle would be the evil like antagonist that is very similar to Sage and like has the exact same look, but does all the bad stuff that Sage won't do.
Sage Northcutt plus Keanu Reeves.
Maybe he's just like his evil alter ego, like Sage. When Sage imagines that he wants to do bad things, like he's got Matt Riddle like standing over his shoulder. Like, yeah.
Exactly. It's like how Rory McDonald plays that role for Mike Ricci.
Okay, round 1's about to begin already. Here we go. We got the ring girl, the octagon girl. Here we go. The long, uncomfortable delay. Oh my God, the fight began. Boy, they really cut in 3 seconds after the actual call by the ref. So we're in. The fight has begun. We're in.
And already we are getting some amazing Matt Riddle boxing. There were 3 or 4 punches in there that hit absolutely nothing.
This is Matt Riddle is exactly what boxing heads think of when they think of MMA fighters throwing punches. This is what they think MMA boxing looks like. Oh my!
He's just putting maximum effort into like throwing these incredibly tight, rigid hooks into nothing. It's great.
And you can tell too. It's that we've talked about it a lot, or we've talked about it on the last show at least about the whole idea of being like a trigger counter fighter, where you feel no. You talked about it in your article. That's where I'm thinking. I'm going crazy because I was thinking about your whole guard article about firing counters off, a triggering off a punch.
Yeah.
And that's obviously what Riddle is doing, but it's like he's waiting until he gets all the way hit and like snaps back from the hit, and then he's like, okay, now I'm gonna fire that counter.
I mean, ideally the trigger counter works because you feel the tactile response of a punch hitting your guard, whereas Riddle's trigger is that he gets hit in the face, and that is what causes him to start throwing punches.
Oh man,
Riddle is, however, a genuinely good wrestler and submission grappler. So I don't think that really gets to be seen in this fight, but it's a thing. Oh my god.
He's so red. Why is he so red?
There's a combination of him getting punched a whole lot and of him just like, yeah, just being a naturally kind of like pale and
oh my god.
Jesus. Just got
he got Fedored by Sean Pierson.
Yeah.
I do think like Pierson is genuinely on in this fight. You know, he does a very good job of staying disciplined and taking advantage in a safe way of every single opportunity given to him. But it makes him look amazing because Matt Riddle won't stop giving him opportunities.
Yeah. No, this is definitely like the highlight of Sean Pierson's career, without question. I mean, he's out wrestling Matt Riddle right now.
Yeah. Nice ugly lift to get him down.
Yeah, I think Riddle is like a class. This was a classic example of him being like, okay, I'm a submission grappler. I'm going to spend like the entire striking, and then is just like he just doesn't have anything like the experience he has. Like, I think learning the distance to strike in sparring, you need about 10 times as much in order to be able to like translate it. It only translates a little amount of it to being able to learn the distance in the actual cage. Like, you need to learn like 10 times as much sparring in order to be able to judge distance once you're in the cage. Because he's clearly like Sean Pierson is about 2 feet closer than he actually is at all times.
I have a theory about this too, which is that, and this is just a totally bullshit theory, so feel free to tell me so. But is that striking is it's a lot easier to learn the super simple basics of striking than it is like wrestling and grappling, but it's a lot harder to get actually really good at striking than it is wrestling and grappling.
I think it's arguably harder to apply in a fight because there are certainly uncomfortable consequences on the ground. There are certainly uncomfortable consequences on the ground that you don't think of before you've grappled. Like a knee on belly is a nightmare that you can never understand until you've experienced it. But being hit in the face will really, like, knee on belly, you can panic respond and still get over it. Getting hit in the face when it causes nerves will completely throw off everything that you know how to do on the feet. It will throw off. Oh my god.
Oh god. Riddle just running like Pierson just stole his iPhone and he has to get it back.
Like he whiffed on the fist. He even whiffed on the fist bump at the end of the round. Like, a little even was turning away by that point. Finally, crack.
I mean, partially it's that consequences thing, but I think another big part of it is just that when you have a tactile body to respond to when you're wrestling and grappling, like, you always are going to know once you've learned the basics. And like I said, I think the basics of grappling are harder to learn because striking, it's literally the basic. It's just like, it's not that hard to learn to ball your fist up and throw it at something. But once you've learned the basics, like you'll always have a sense of where you are, even if you don't know what to do with that.
I would argue that the basics of striking certainly go beyond balling up one's fist.
I know you would, but stick with me here. There's a lot of really god-awfully, mediocrely effective MMA strikers.
You can be an effective striker with comparatively bad fundamentals.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's true. I think the tactile response thing is a big part of it. Like you can feel where somebody is at all times. You can feel where the pressure is. You can feel where they're going. Feel is a lot more reliable than sight in a fight. And when you're Matt Riddle and you're not a very good striker and you're constantly covering your own eyes with your hands and you're being punished every single time you throw, you just don't you're not in contact unless you're being hit. So you just don't everything. It's way easier to trick someone into thinking that you're standing farther away than you are on the feet. On the ground, they can feel what you're doing.
Yeah. Man,
I've
Don Cruz out there.
Yeah, like Pierson, Riddle, he fights kind of like, he strikes kind of like with no with no actual application of, he's got the same kind of, he'll try and do the rushing punches and then finish it off with a kick, but meanwhile Sean Pierson is 7 feet away.
It is the definition of rote striking.
Yes.
The combinations have clearly been practiced, but in practice they're not doing anything. See, a lot of it too is Pierson's positioning is pretty good in this fight. He's always pointed directly at Riddle's center line. Look how square Riddle is compared to Pierson. He is just giving up the center of his body. He's completely square. I think he actually has a reach advantage, but he's not actually positioning himself to use it. Whereas Pierson is just constantly penetrating the middle of Riddle's stance, just stabbing through his hands and even as he lands, he is, because of the angle he has, too far away for Riddle to actually hit him. But Riddle doesn't know that. He doesn't know how to adjust to it and get the angle he needs to land his own punches. He's just planting his feet and throwing a combination.
It is the most textbook example I can think of.
Just 1-2 beckon on, get punched in the face, 1-2. All of them are solid 18 inches away.
Yeah. You can see Riddle he's trying to get that tactile response. When he is leading, he's just kind of throwing away punches, trying to just feel where Pierson is. But when he gets hit, he just completely clenches his fist and swings, desperately hoping that he can knock out the guy who's tagging him.
It is one of the most textbook examples I can ever think of really this is what rote striking looks like. This is what having no idea of how to apply and wanting to constantly apply striking basics looks like.
There's some really good little subtle things that Pierson is doing here to take advantage of the man who has no subtlety whatsoever to his striking. He steps in, he takes off a little tiny angle to the inside every single time he does with that jab. He's lining it up every time, and Riddle has no idea how to take that angle away from him.
Yeah,
he does a nice job of occasionally, mix it up. He'll step a bit further out and then land the right hook, or occasionally he'll throw the left straight down the middle.
Oh my god!
It almost worked for Riddle. He jumped on. He stunned Pierson briefly and jumped on the guillotine.
That's the thing. Matt Riddle is in a lot of ways he's a legitimately talented guy. He has that ridiculous jaw break when he first came into the UFC. I mean, he's never had a pro fight out. He never had a pro fight outside the UFC.
Nope.
Did he?
No.
And he had that. I think it was his last fight. Was it Chris Clements? He landed he finished him with something like a spinning back fist into standing arm triangle. I was like, what are you doing, Matt Riddle? That was amazing. He's not an undynamic guy. He's just
No, I mean, a lot of it really is just him being a big, tough, strong, reasonable athlete. Not great, but reasonable, who got into the deep end before he had any fundamentals and is basically just having to learn how to apply what little he knows against guys who are a lot better schooled than him.
And because he has no concept of like distance management, the only way he can even get to the ground is for Pierson to make an ill-advised attempt at a shot. That's.
I will say Matt Riddle seems to have so much fun when he's getting beat up.
Yeah, I do think it's a bit forced, right? It's like he's not really having a good time here. he's in a world of hurt. He's
to be fair, who could?
Well, yeah. Jab, hook.
Oh, that lead elbow was just a remarkable thing.
We'll see more in the third round.
I gotta say, I love the lead elbow there, especially because Riddle was in distance to land one of the hooks that he had been throwing all day. So he chose to throw the shortest strike yet to make sure.
It just shows how off his sense of distance is. Like, he thinks he's like, even in his head, he's like, okay, now I'm close enough to land the elbow, but he's finally only at the point where the hook would actually work. He's only just reached punching range. We'll see in this round. Part of the big problem here for Matt Riddle is watch how jumpy he is whenever Pierson feints. Because there were a couple instances in round 2. He has no idea when Pierson is close enough or in the right position to hit him. So when Pierson feints, Riddle always thinks he's about to get hit.
Well, Pierson, every time Pierson has taken a half step in, Riddle has immediately tried to punch him 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if Pierson is feinting or not. And
yeah, I've got an article I've been sitting on for ages, which I keep meaning to finish, one of the 20, but which is basically about distance perception, how people do it, and how it's driven MMA striking, and how it's basically one of the hardest things to do. The thing is that I think distance perception is something which is A, super difficult to do, and is B, is very difficult to learn and very fragile to learn. A lot of the time it will go out of the window over the course of a fight. To his credit, Riddle isn't not doing any worse at perceiving the distance, but that's because that's kind of impossible. But the classic example would be, and maybe we can watch this at some point, Leslie Smith rin the car. Oh my God. That's amazing. That is the one. That's the one that gets gift.
Matt Riddle's like, come on, and Pierson's like, why? You keep coming on. I'm doing fine.
Hitting him over and over as hard as he can, cleaning in the jaw.
Oh man, this fight's great.
Look at the position. Riddle is totally square. He's completely clueless. He's just letting Pierson put his foot between Riddle's legs. He's just letting him take that angle.
Oh, I mean,
it's if I keep punching, eventually this guy he's gonna be in the range. If I just walk forward and keep punching, it's Pierson's moving backwards as fast as you're moving forwards, and he's countering you between every punch.
I know I made the joke about somebody else fighting like Bart Simpson in the past, but God, doesn't that Riddle just the absolute personification of the Bart Simpson fight style?
Bart Simpson or Cyborg Fry?
Cyborg Fry.
Robot Fry from Futurama fights the same way.
That's right.
It is.
Also, I'm not spoiling this.
No, go on.
I'm not spoiling this when I say this isn't a split decision, is it?
I don't think so. I fucking hope not. Jesus Christ.
This definitely won fight of the night though.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably.
I mean, in a weird way, I'm okay. Because as far as entertainment goes,
yeah.
This is this is an amazing fight that I would definitely want
I don't recall what the
everyone
rest of
to see.
UFC 124 was, but it's hard to imagine any fight being more flatly entertaining than this. Like once Pierson steps to that short angle, he can literally just plant his feet and throw and land every single punch because Riddle is not adjusting and he's not defending. He's just throwing punches at air.
Oh man.
Ugh. How to dominate a fight with a slip jab and almost nothing else.
It is a great example of the never has so much counted for so little quote. And
it's a great lesson for basic boxing fundamentals in mixed martial arts. Like Joe Rogan's always talking about Martin Kampman, but I sure hope during this fight at some point he said, "Young fighters, if you want to know how to box at the most basic level, look at One Shot Pierson is doing."
I think he actually might have said that. I mean, because this fight is pretty, and it's not dissimilar to like to Sanchez Kampman, right?
It was 30-27s across the board, just so you know.
All right, that's good.
Jesus Christ!
Oh, it's amazing, amazing. Yeah, so just remember, like the fight.
His power bro persona in pro wrestling is so well earned.
You just gotta. You kind of feel embarrassed for Riddle that he's like forcing all of this excitement and everything. It's like, dude, you looked horrible. You looked so bad in this entire fight.
Well, that's what makes it a great pro wrestling persona, is that you do like...
Here it is. Here it is. Riddle's just grinning the whole time, too. They exchanged 4 jabs in a row. Every single one of Riddle's misses. Every single one of Pierson's lands.
He's literally like a computer game character. Like, it's like watching something out of like a Fight Night game.
It's that dude it's like the little kid who first, just got a copy of Fight Night and is playing online and is just like nobody wants to play against him because not only do you win, but it's just it's like so unfun and like.
Yeah. No fair. I don't know how to do that. No fair. How's he doing that jab?
Matt Riddle was desperately hoping he could pause the fight to look at his moves list.
That's right.
Like, I don't remember the button combination.
He's desperately trying to remember how he threw that amazing elbow strike.
Yeah.
That is absolutely a great example of like when you play a fighting game on practice mode. And like you can't really get hit. Like Matt Riddle didn't actually get hurt in that fight. Rather, you can't really get hurt, but the computer will just do the same few things over and over again while you test out your moves.
Yeah.
You have to give both guys a little kind of weird respect, right? Because less disciplined fighters than Sean Pierson might have really been fucked up by the fact that Matt Riddle seemed not to care whatsoever that he was being dominated. And that might have shaken some less disciplined fighters. Matt Riddle surely could have been more shaken if he was somebody else. Like, if anybody else had one of those rounds, it would have broken them. And it didn't break Matt Riddle.
No, even at the end, he's like, yeah, I fucking rocked that fight.
Oh, lovely.
Lovely. All right, so let's get to Kongo, Matt Mitrione.
Now let's get more depressed.
Yep. Slow things down a little. So we'll be starting in 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, Lord. Even if this weren't a bad fight, it couldn't possibly be as much fun as we just had.
But it's a Czech Kongo fight, and it's not Czech Kongo's one exciting fight. Well, actually, I mean, he's had a few, like, if you give him someone that he completely physically outclasses, he will finish them. Like, to his credit.
To his credit, his fight with Cain Velasquez was awesome.
Yeah?
Even
I mean, you
not
still
being
managed.
somebody he could physically outclass, but it was a fun fight.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, in a weird way, if you like, it seems like if you kind of beat Kongo's ass enough, you can like knock the boring out of him.
Yeah,
Like the Pat Barry fight being the classic example.
I think that's the real
'Cause-
thing. Is that if you can actually put him in real danger, you can force him to fight hard.
Yeah, I mean
That's
the great thing is that like you guys must have friends that like don't really follow MMA much, but like maybe
All of
like
them.
like
Friends?
but like but like occasionally they'll like post like I don't know, I have a ton of friends who like will post like clips from MMA or something, and all the time you'll see these the one that comes up all the time is like Barry Kongo, and it's just like these guys have no idea what Czech Kongo's actually like. He looks like this fucking hero who fights back from the the brink of destruction to like he looks like one of the most fucking exciting fighters you've ever seen. You'd be like, I want to see more of this fucking Czech Kongo guy.
It's like
but he's
it's
Czech
like
Kongo.
the UFC debut of our dearly departed Canadian boring fighter. What was his name? I'm Ryan
Jimmo.
Ryan Jimmo.
Ryan Jimmo. It was like his 2 UFC fights where he's just blowing people out of the water. And UFC fans who had not followed him in MFC were like, Ryan Jimmo, man, what a great addition. And then like everyone who'd ever watched Canadian MMA was like, no, do not get excited. Ryan Jimmo is a curse on this world. His fights are always terrible.
Oh, poor Ryan Jimmo.
I know.
Yeah, he was a good dude.
He was.
But unfortunately not, apart from those 2 wins. Not a terribly thrilling fighter. I mean,
Definitely not.
winning a 5-round decision over late career Ramo Thierry Sokoudjou says everything. Like,
It's true. Sokoudjou is what if you took all the technique and stamina out of Vitor Belfort's game?
yeah, like I mean, that was one of those ones where I looked at it and I was literally like, how? How do you not finish Sokoudjou? Like he's got about 2 minutes of stamina. How did you manage to go 25 minutes with him?
Sokoudjou.
We maybe should acknowledge the fact that we have not mined the career of Czech Kongo nearly as much as we should for this show, because is there another, even among heavyweights, is there another heavyweight who has had such a high rate of terribly boring and also foul-filled fights?
Yeah, I mean,
we could have had this one or Brown. Those are both pretty great. And that one's great because I think he gets a point deduction and a draw.
Part of this is my fault, I'll admit, because I don't want this to just be the heavyweight MMA show.
It's hard to avoid it though, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, we're doing 2 Mitrione just ran straight into fucking third team.
We have to tell the world, because the world loves heavyweights, right? Like the world thinks that heavyweight is a guarantee of the best action you can get in combat sports. And we have to tell the world, like, yes, they get by far more knockouts than any other division. They also have objectively the worst fights of any division. Heavyweight is the home of, and even some of the knockouts are horrible. They're like terrible fights that someone just happens to get hit really hard in. You just don't, there aren't very many good athletes at heavyweight. So we can avoid making all of our fights heavyweight fights, but let's be honest. Here with Kongo Mitrione and Sylvia Arlovski 3 as our last 2, we may have selected 2 of the least interesting fights we've ever done to put on this one show.
Well, you guys are, I'm trying to follow like your guys' excitement. This is the stuff you guys were like, yeah. Well, okay, Connor was like, yeah. Phil came in late and was like, what the fuck is this? But still, Connor,
I mean, it's not just the athletes, right? I think at least it's partially that people kind of just don't know how to, like, I just don't, like, it's one of these these vicious cycles, right? Where people don't know how to train heavyweights, and then they don't know how to train heavyweights. Like because they used to train, like heavyweights just can't train. If like the classic thing was like Cain Velasquez, right? You know, people would be like, oh, he trains like a lightweight fighter. He keeps going after all the lightweight fighters after they're all exhausted when we're training at AK, and then he just got fucking injured all the time because you can't train like a lightweight fighter. They have to train differently. And I don't know if how many, you know, MMA training is still relatively, you know, it's getting there, but it's certainly not like figured out.
Yeah.
And I think heavyweight training, you know, people just haven't figured out how do you properly train heavyweights.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like basically if you imagine like it's like if you're a dog trainer, right? And someone's been training dogs their whole life to like jump through, and then like a whole bunch of people are like, and then someone comes along and they're like, okay, you got 30 dogs. Now train this sea lion. And the sea lion, like, it's just sad and it's just flopping around. And you try and make it jump through the hoops, but it's a fucking sea lion. It can't do it. Or a manatee.
This is my favorite David Mitchell-esque rant of your.
They have to train to fight differently too. Like it's not like they can't. It's not just that they can't match the intensity and everything of the smaller fighters, but you have to have different standards for what a fight is supposed to look like, what technique is supposed to look like, how you strategize when you're dealing with guys who are 260 pounds. Which is why I have no problem saying that Fabricio Verdum has quite good boxing, even though if his boxing were transported to the lightweight division, it would be abysmal. It would be because it's moving the mass of your body. It just takes an entirely different sort of mindset in this division.
While he's getting greased up, though, can we just take a minute to remind ourselves, having not watched a lot of Czech Kongo lately, now that he's off in Bellator, rarely fighting, God, he's pretty. Like, he is literally designed the way that you think every fighter should be built.
He looks like the perfect fighter.
He does.
Yeah. And this got him a shitload of marquee not wins, but like appearances. Because people be like, oh yeah, you got an exciting prospect. Czech Kongo, got Krokop. And it'd just be like, every time people would just completely forget. It's fucking Czech Kongo. He's like, somewhere out there, there's some fat Midwestern grinder who's just out there like flying, kneeing, and like just dropping people with high octane shit because he had a body swap with Czech Kongo at some point. Like, meanwhile, Czech Kongo is kind of looking out through this body of this chiseled like Greek statue, and then just like pushing people up into the fence and just kneeing them in the balls, like TKOing Paul Buentello with Charlie horse elbows.
You're saying that like Sean Jordan and Czech Kongo body swapped?
Exactly, yeah. That is exactly it. Like Sean Jordan like knocking out Derek Lewis with what was it, like a question mark kick or like a crescent kick or something?
Yeah, it was a hook kick, a lead leg hook kick.
Yeah, hook kick. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, Czech Kongo, were he not to have experienced whatever Freaky Friday situation he clearly went through, would be knocking people out with hook kicks.
Oh.
So yeah,
I'm so glad you managed to figure out who that was, Zane. Like, that is perfect. Like I remember Sean Jordan doing that perfect like 3-point backflip in the cage, like the one that's much better than GSP's, like the one that someone photoshops. They put like Bill's mohawk on it and made him do like the flash kick, and I can never find that gif. But it was amazing. It was perfect. Like fat Guile doing Street Fighter flash kick, but. That is the perfect one. He is Czech Kongo's Freaky Friday.
Compare the physiques and appearances of these two men.
I know.
One of them does not look like he belongs in the cage with the other, and yet we're about to see an extremely close fight.
Yeah. Well, that also brings me to one of the things I really love about Matt.
Sorry. Hold on. Round one is about to begin. Sorry, Zane. Round one begins for our viewers now.
One of the things that I love about Matt Mitrione as well is to the exact opposite effect. Like, he never got nearly enough credit for actually being a very good athlete because he looks so dowdy and like just shapeless, you know?
Stylistically, you mean?
Well, and just body wise, like he just kind of looks like he.
We're talking about Czech Kongo here or someone else?
No,
Mitrione?
Matt Mitrione, dude.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Come on, jeez, you take 5 seconds to call the beginning of the round, and suddenly
my brain was in another dimension. Yeah, no, Matt Mitrione is a phenomenal athlete. He's very fast. He's very light in his feet. He hits really hard.
He's absolutely meathead by nature, but
no doubt. So this is, as I think I noted at the top of the show, this is the fight where my running inside joke that Czech Kongo is a master of survival above all else began. The idea that Czech Kongo he's never actually been knocked out. He's just realized that he needs to go to the hospital in order to escape. And so he feigns unconsciousness and then flees the moment his ambulance arrives at the hospital. That if necessary, Czech Kongo would airlift himself and just fly up into the rafters of the arena in order to escape punishment, because Czech Kongo's entire style seems built around neutralization. It's just about surviving.
He's that video game boss that you fight early and you're like, oh, I'm whipping his ass. And then he disappears and he comes back in like 5 levels later as like a way, way, way better version. Like right before he's going to die, he just disappears. You're like, what?
And this time he has like 5 secret health bars.
Exactly.
Oh man. So already we have a very compelling staring contest between these two men.
Yeah.
Woo.
Mitrione.
Into the fence. Here we go.
Yeah, no. Like, Czech Kongo is, like, together with, like, I think there's a kind of lineage kind of connecting him and Rampage and Bisping. You know, the Wolfslayer guys, they are, like, consistently, like, I get the impression they just spar super fucking hard and they are all consistently dirty as hell. Like, and, you know, I mean, some of it's pretty good. Like, he's very unafraid to use his head, as is Bisping, which helped him out greatly when Bisping, like, stunned Chael with a headbutt.
These are our favorite unpopular opinions. Like, I think, Phil, I don't know if you agree with Zane and I, but Zane and I don't really care about steroids, and I wholeheartedly approve of cheating, of fouling in fights. Like, if you can get away with it, why the hell would you not do it?
Yep. I don't wholeheartedly, but I don't wholeheartedly approve it, but I respect it. Like,
I respect it. That's a good way to say it. Like, I do want referees to stop it, but I also totally respect fighters who try to get away with it with referees who won't stop it. Why wouldn't you? Czech Kongo, by the way, is a genuinely powerful and dangerous striker, and it is comical that he has so few knockouts throughout his career, because he really could be a devastating striker if his style was just a little different.
When you dropped out, we were talking about this, that a big thing with Kongo I've seen and over the years is that he fights. You can only really get him to fight hard when you can dominate him.
Right, yeah.
Like when you can push him to the brink, then suddenly he really shows that he can be a dangerous fighter.
But it's dangerous because if you don't push him to the brink, a lot of the time he smothers you and beats you.
Oh yeah, he'll just coast you out.
Yeah.
Czech Kongo does deserve some respect for his career. Like, he's fought a lot of really good heavyweights, and he's often had some really impressive moments. You know, who else other than Junior Dos Santos has hurt Cain Velasquez the way Czech Kongo did, like 3 times in their fight, putting him on the verge of being knocked out. You know, he's fought a who's who for a long, and he's still going strong. Like, he still looks like Czech Kongo in Bellator. He doesn't look any worse.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of that is that because he's so defensive, he doesn't get knocked out very often.
Yeah.
And see that little sequence there, you got a brief look at what, you know, Czech Kongo striker might actually look like.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that, like, the thing is that Czech Kongo he's not a striker. Like, it's just not who he is. Like, despite the fact that he had the kickboxing record, he just doesn't kickbox with people. He's a clinch grinder.
Yeah. If he was a boxer at the turn of the 20th century, he would have been Jack Johnson, like a big, strong dude who counterpunched and then just held you in the clinch. Like, in another era, Czech Kongo might have been like one of the greatest heavyweights of all time.
Yeah, he and it is weird though too, especially in MMA, that he isn't, and I think it's part of the like having to get almost beat too, to like actually put a lot in, is that he's not a confident striker. He doesn't want to be in open space punching you.
Yeah.
At all.
He's also, I think, had trouble. I think maybe the big issue for Kongo is that he has a lot of trouble translating his kickboxing to MMA. He's got this quite upright stance, and there's no marriage really between Czech Kongo wrestler and Czech Kongo striker. And for him, that means like strike as little as possible. If things get dicey, you wrestle.
Can we also take a second to enjoy here as the second round starts? This being the prime Dominator Alliance era Matt Mitrione, where he's working the basics but none of the actual parts of Dominic Cruz's striking game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the dancing and the hand movement and the back and forth and in and out, and rarely actually throwing anything that will land or has any kind of technique to it.
This is the case with every fighter who's ever tried to imitate Dominic Cruz or Anderson Silva. It's just surface level. Like, you do things that look like what they're doing, but you clearly don't understand why they're doing it. Yeah. Dominic Cruz will do all these little steps, and while Dominic Cruz is doing it to determine how you react to it while he's finding the angle, and if you don't react or if you do react, he's going to capitalize. People who imitate Dominic Cruz, they just make the moves, and then it's like Shogun Rua with his head movement. Like, okay, I'm showing off my head movement. All right, stop that. Now it's time to go back to actually fighting. There's no marriage between those two things.
There's a nice little sequence there of Czech Kongo on offense. I think it seems like he's maybe started to figure out a little bit that Matt Mitrione isn't actually going to try and wrestle him at all.
Ooh, Mitrione landed a nice right hand in there.
Yeah.
Mitrione's an interesting kind of case study, because he's one of those guys who was like forever. He felt like he was always better and worse, than people thought he was. He was always a good, that's the thing. He became just a good technical striker and just a horrific grappler, just terrible. Like, he is a bit of a classic. Like, I have to say this, like, it's happened too many times. He's a classic Black Zillions like fighter, where they have one layer of good striking offense and a kind of footwork based takedown defense, and if that gets broken, either kind of mentally or just by being taken down, like, toast. Like, it was like so he's been trained just like he got trained after this into this kind of a much better version of this kind of much more efficient version of what we're seeing now. But like, his game never got any deeper than it is right now.
And that's also just a fight IQ decision-making thing that he's never gonna fix. That, like, he just does not make good in-fight decisions.
Czech Kongo, master of survival, is also masterminding a strategy here where he's taking advantage of Mitrione's meatheadedness to like constantly touch gloves with him and like make him feel like they're just sparring. Meanwhile, Czech Kongo is only concerned with coming away with a close decision and going home.
I don't mind. I quite like Kongo's kind of attacking the lead leg as Mitrione steps forward. He makes sure that he's not ever getting a free step in.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but he's got this is probably a better, like, it's a better fight from him than I remember it being.
The fact that Mitrione continues to pressure and that Kongo is finding ways to counter through 2 rounds, I mean, it's not an awful fight, honestly. Like, the fact too that they're two heavyweights who aren't just fucking as tired as can be right now, and have
they
kept
both
up
look fresh.
Yeah, that's
reasonably
that's actually
high
pretty
work.
impressive. Yeah, it's not
Kongo, throw an uppercut.
like Brown. Like, yeah, I remember Brown Kongo being maybe worse than this, but perhaps. I don't know.
We also have yet to get a true foul. Kongo's thrown several tight knees to the upper inner thigh, but nothing that's really found the foul home yet.
His very first one that he threw right at the beginning, I think that might have been like a groin shot, but I don't think they.
Mitrione just didn't take it that way, so
yeah.
Kongo's feet are just all over the place, though. Like the way he stands, he's just rigid. He's upright. He does not maintain his stance. There are little flashes where he'll bend his knees and get a good shot in and back Mitrione off, or he'll keep his stance and keep a jab out there, and then he just goes back to just walking backwards.
You know, I don't know why it never struck me though. Too, it just struck me now, but I don't know why I never did before. That being both Wolf Slayer fighters, like how much the way he strikes is reminiscent of how Rampage strikes, but with a few kicks thrown in. Like his stance and his posture and his like the way he approaches it is definitely like a training partner of the same.
Yeah,
you know.
Rampage's hook definitely adds a lot into his game, and like his general lack of fear of being in the pocket, I think adds a lot to his game that Kongo could potentially use. But yeah, like Connor was saying, it's his general kind of he's very easy to kind of force into these kind of single lines of movement. Like it's the classic thing is obviously like the big country fight, right? Big country just kind of lines him up on the fence and then goes, gestures to make sure that he's not going to go one way and then just donks him on the head and that's it.
Yeah, it never struck me like suddenly now just seeing it as like the products of the same kind of training.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that same sort of rigidity and oh man,
ooh, nice.
Kongo fought like that, like for more than a half second. If he just kept going like that.
An uppercut to the body and a left hook to the head. The first time Kongo has thrown either of those punches.
And he did get the takedown because, as we say,
Mitrione is looking for a knee bar. He instantly rolled under and looked for a leg.
Oh man!
Now a Kimura.
Mitrione is basically just like holding on to parts of Kongo that let Kongo just stay on top of him. Like, here, guy, let me just keep you on top of me. He just rolled for deep half. He was almost standing up and just rolled into deep half guard.
Is Matt Mitrione, is he just individually flawed, or is he perhaps a bad advertisement for the coaching skills of Neil Melanson? Because I just realized he was Alliance and then Black Zillions, and at both he is coached by Neil Melanson in his grappling, and he's always been an awful grappler.
It could be a bad advertisement for that. It could. I think
Neil Melanson genuinely knows his shit. He's been doing some shady business with like claiming a catch wrestling background or whatever, but he is a good grappling coach, I think. But
yeah,
I'm reluctant to just say that it's his fault that Mitrione's not a good grappler. Maybe it's just Matt Mitrione.
Like he might just suck at grappling. I think that's probably more. Like I think there are certain guys who like Melvin Guillard is a classic, like someone who just freaks out once it hits the floor. Michael Johnson isn't particularly great either. And admittedly, like, again, I'm kind of going a bit Black Zillions themed. I don't think it's a great place for fixing those guys. I don't think because I think the general mentality of if you lose at things, you suck is the general striking focus is very good for making people better at not panicking when it hits the ground.
Yeah.
Well, there are just certain fighters too that they just don't. It's not even that necessarily they might always be bad grapplers, but they don't want to grapple at all. They don't want to do it in the gym. They don't
Great
want to
example.
do it in the fight.
A great example of how it can be up to the fighter. Matt Brown was not a very good grappler until recently. Now he's actually got quite a capable ground game. But, and I think this speaks to what Phil's saying about the Black Zillions, when I talked to Matt Brown several years ago when he was supposed to fight Carlos Condit, he said that he believed the reason he was getting submitted and outworked on the ground so much is because he was so desperate not to grapple. Like, he was so afraid of grappling that it made him panic and rush and not be disciplined. And that once he realized that he could grapple and that he was allowed to, you know, be methodical on the ground, he got way better. Like, no one would say that Matt Brown doesn't have a good guard game now, you know?
Yep.
This is also, it should be noted, Matt Mitrione is a great advertisement too for the idea of like what happens if you took an NFL level athlete and gave them 6 months of sprawl training.
Yes, he is the classic 6 months of sprawl training fighter.
Yeah, and it's like he might be, like, he can win. He could win a few fights, but you know,
even after like 6 years, he's still
going to be bad at this.
He's still kind of 6 months, and he's still kind of on the 6 months of sprawl training, at least as far as his grappling goes.
Yeah,
he's basically just a lot better at. But you know, from Czech Kongo here, we have like Czech Kongo. If he actually gets you down, he is a pretty vicious ground and pounder. Like,
oh yeah,
he is not a fun guy to have on top of you.
At the very least, he's one of the he was, especially in his era. I don't know necessarily as much anymore, but especially in his era, he was one of the best top control wrestlers in the heavyweight division because he's actually fast and mobile enough to stay on top of people as they try to roll through. Like, Mitrione's rolling all over the place in this fight, and Kongo has no trouble just sticking with the ride and outmaneuvering him.
He's a good ride wrestler, Czech Kongo.
Yeah.
Like, his takedown game is iffy sometimes and everything, but when on the ground, it's pretty hard to get Czech Kongo off from on top of you. I wonder if some of that has to do with training with Rampage Jackson.
So, in lieu of this fight, which is not nearly as boring enough to be a bad fight, I got to say, in retrospect, did Kongo even have a foul that was called at all?
No.
I feel like we've let everyone down. We let ourselves down.
Well, Connor. This was Connor. Connor figured this out.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay. I mean, remember what we have next, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Remember what I could have done is suggested a second Tim Sylvia fight, because the other one I wanted to do was Sylvia versus Asuerio Silva, which is the one where Tim Sylvia shits his pants. So be thankful we got this instead of 2 Tim Sylvia fights.
Maybe we'll have an episode. Do we have anyone? Do we have anyone that we could do like an episode devoted to? Is there anyone that has like a good bad, a bad, and a letdown fight?
Almost certainly, yeah. Well, we should find one. That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna, Fabricio Verdum, I think, is actually a pretty good one for that.
That's true.
We can find. I think it won't be hard to find a bad fight, and he has a good bad fight with Travis Brown, and then he has a disappointment with Alistair Overeem. We
could do like Verdum versus Karatanov. I remember that being pretty dull and bad. Yeah. We could do Verdum Overeem. Yeah, Verdum Overeem too is pretty terrible. And then what's Verdum's disappointment?
His disappointment is his Overeem fight.
Definitely.
Okay. Even though it is kind of good bad.
No, yeah, but it was still like, this was Ubereem time when he was supposed to be this destroyer of worlds.
And it was Verdum post-submitting Fedor.
Yeah, and it was just a massive letdown.
And Verdum was a decent striker at that point. He wasn't. It was just that he obviously didn't believe he was against Overeem.
There were significant portions of that fight in which he was outstriking Overeem, and I know Pat Wyman talks all the time about how Rafael Cordero tore him to shreds for that fight because Cordero believed that Verdum left a winnable fight on the table, which he did. He could have been more aggressive and won that fight because Overeem was puffing and puffing by the third round, and Verdum was okay. He could have outstruck him.
All right. So now we got to get to Tim Sylvia versus Andrei Arlovski, because this is going to eat up a bunch of time and it's going to be really crappy, and we got to get into this. So We are starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
By the way, speaking of 6 months of sprawl training, I know that was a few minutes ago, but is that a dead meme now? I think
hope so.
There are probably new MMA fans who don't know that is a phrase that used to be super common on every MMA message board.
Let's bring it back. I mean, we've got all these boxing versus MMA like crossover fights.
6 months of sprawl training, and Floyd will be able to stop the double leg.
Exactly.
I mean, I think partially it's a dead meme now because we finally have enough overwhelming evidence. Not that there wasn't always overwhelming evidence, but MMA has finally started to make people enough money that we have seen enough crossover where it's just so obviously not true.
It just took MMA's stupidest fans a while to give that one up. That's all that it is.
Well, and the sport did literally need to make enough money that it would start attracting high-level strikers who wanted to try it. And it always had good strikers going in, but they weren't, for people who just got into MMA, they weren't the strikers that they knew or had heard of. And so it took a while to get, to get guys that were actually good athletes or good strikers and convince them after your great athletic career that wasn't wrestling, maybe you should try MMA. And we have enough of that now that it's just pretty clear that that does not make them superstars.
Remember when Andre Arlovski used to have a flowing mane?
Yes. It's glorious.
Now he looks like the Count of his vampire castle. Back then he looked like the dandy son of the Count. Right?
Well, I mean, Count Dracula's always had the long hair. I don't know. I feel like he could have been the Count at any point.
Just compare him to Tim Sylvia in appearance, though. You could never imagine that Tim Sylvia would dominate Andre Arlovski for 5 rounds based on appearance. Tim Sylvia is the most skinny fat any MMA fighter has ever been.
True.
He is maybe he is MMA's greatest overachiever, right?
Yeah.
I think
so.
There's no real competition. It is.
You could also say he's MMA's worst ever champion. At least the UFC's worst ever champion. But it kind of makes you respect him, right? He's like Michael Bisping ×2, not only in body mass, but in how unable he was to do the athletic things that his counterparts were doing. And yet he legitimately got to the title in a way that Michael Bisping kind of had to have the chips fall the right way. Tim Sylvia actually forged a path to the title and held it. So
it's a great example too of the idea that the first things you have to be good at MMA tend to be size and toughness. You have to be the right size for your division, and you have to be tough enough to take a beating. And if you're not, then and with those two things alone, you can beat a lot of people.
Yeah. And he just worked hard as shit.
Yeah.
He just kept at it, and he had a secret magic weapon that no one else was ready for.
He's kind of MMA's Nikolai Valuev.
Yeah,
Valuev, who was not very good, but was 7 feet tall.
Yep,
and knew how to use it. But he's not MMA's Semi-Schilt. Semi-Schilt was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Is Arlovski going to come out to Onward to Victory? Because I know it's the most MMA thing ever, but it's actually one of my favorite walkout songs. I think it's very well suited to him.
I couldn't tell you. I haven't watched this with the sound on, and
I'm going to listen for it. You know the song, right?
No, not off the top of my head.
Oh, it starts with a siren, and it's super nu metal, and it's just a guy screaming the phrase "Onward to Victory, never accept defeat."
Okay. Don't sing it.
It's the most MMA walkout song ever, but it's perfect.
Man. Yeah, so I think I started watching MMA seriously a little bit after this fight, if I'm correct. And then I went back and I'd I decided I was going to catch up on.
You went back and
you catch up on the sport as you do, and like decided that I really liked Andrei Arlovski, and he was super cool.
Yeah, me
So
too. I
the
also had a
next,
thing for
like-
Arlovski when I first got into it.
Yeah. So the next so there was like Andrei Arlovski. For some reason, I really liked Brandon Vera as well. So basically, like my early UFC watching career was super depressing, which was like a good like toughening up experience for the sport as a whole. Like
Wayne Newton is there. I'm sorry, Phil. Please go on.
Go on, 'cause I have a point to make too, but Phil, I don't want you to get too sidetracked by Wayne Newton. So, a fight's about to start.
But yeah, just like you just learned that, like, oh yeah, that's something that kind of counts in.
Oh no, we got too much time. Keep talking.
But yeah, it was basically just like so much of like early UFC is like learning to like people and then watching them go on brutal sad slides.
It is why the typical MMA fandom lasts about a year or two before people just fade out of watching the sport entirely, because they got into it for a few key fighters, and then those fighters start losing all the time, and they're like, okay, I don't want to watch this anymore. It's like MMA tends to have a very high turnover rate in that way because of that. There's always this new batch of terribly disillusioned fans.
What's the solution to that, though? Because,
There isn't one.
well, it's not. You could compare it to boxing, where when you get a favorite fighter, you're going to keep seeing him win for a while because he's going to get fed easy fights. But boxing was more popular before that was common. You know, boxing was more popular when the best were fighting the best constantly and losing all the time.
Just sell it to dumb millennials as like as being like the Game of Thrones or the Walking Dead or whatever.
You never know who's going to die.
Do you want to watch your main characters getting repeatedly annihilated?
Guys, we just missed. We missed Mark Wahlberg, and I believe was that Gwyneth Paltrow that I saw.
Maybe. Also, much.
I thought it was a lady from the '70s show, and Orange is the New Black.
Maybe it was her.
Donna from the '70s show.
But we should remark that this is when MMA, the UFC was a cult celebrity icon thing, status thing, whereas like all Hollywood was really into cage fighting, and they were like, yeah, cage fighting is awesome, and I totally publicly support this because it has no like popular appeal whatsoever to the rest of the country.
Fight begins. Hold on, we have to look at Jeremy Rennick. Fight begins. Holy shit. Come on, guys. Come on, John. He's not even ready. Come on, John. You're killing me. Fight begins now.
So imagine, if you will, the idea in today's era that Mark Wahlberg and Wayne Newton are showing up for a Tim Sylvia fight.
Yeah. We're coming back, though, right? Tom Hardy recently accused Levon Makashvili of being Russian. So we're coming back.
It always has a little bit of that celebrity appeal left over, but it's just funny to see it in its celebrity cult heyday. And like all these like A-list, B-list celebrities surrounding the cage for something that you're like, why would you waste your Saturday evening on this?
Back when Anthony Kiedis wouldn't have missed a Frank Trigg fight for the world.
Exactly. Oh man.
Here we go. Look at Tim Sylvia's legs. Yeah. They're so weird. He's such a weird shaped dude.
He's built the way that like 3/4 of the dudes who think that they could have played for the NFL if they'd only had enough time, if they'd only like wanted it bad enough, are built. Like that's every dude who's like, I could have been a pro athlete, you know, if I just really wanted to go after it and trained hard enough. They all have the Tim Sylvia body.
Maybe they're right, man. Because seriously, Tim Sylvia deserves some credit for getting as far as he did.
No, he's the most robotic, wooden, awkward, and yet still functional and winning fighter I can think of.
This is also perhaps go on, Phil.
So, like for Tim Sylvia, he's in all right shape for this fight as well.
Oh yeah,
like he's looking pretty trim.
Mm-hmm.
This is full roided out Tim Sylvia.
This is not super heavyweight Tim Sylvia, definitely. This is perhaps also, this fight is the biggest I don't know, critique. It's the most damning fight of Arlovski's career for the simple fact that he's always been a one-handed fighter, but he literally has no idea how to deal with somebody who uses their left hand.
Yep. He just got put on skates by a Tim Sylvia right hand.
Tim Sylvia does have big dude power, like the lanky, long. By the time that punch reaches the end of its extension, there is some snap on it.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying Tim Sylvia has no power. It's just Arlovski getting put on skates at a random moment in a fight is so Arlovski.
Yeah, because it's just like a flurry of 16 right hands in a row, lunging into the pocket. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the fact that Arlovski managed to have like eight rounds. I think, like, because I'm gonna include the Bigfoot fight in this, where he just get stranded on the edge of a jab, on the end of a jab, and just be like, what do I do here?
Yeah.
He got his revenge because he could come back, and because he's a vampire and he's eternal, so like he could just come back and dunk on these guys once they'd gotten super like. We're just physically falling apart. You could just be like, where's that now that I'm 6 times faster than you are?
Also,
like those two fights, man.
But also, much like Game of Thrones, spoilers, all your favorite characters die, but many of them come back from the dead in MMA. Andrei Arlovski's a prime example of that. Like, you're pretty sure he's gone for good, and he comes back, and he's got a renaissance. You got Robbie Lawler. You've got Mark Hunt.
It just turns out in Arlovski's case that the fake fangs, they weren't actually fake. Like it was a mass hypnosis all other times to trick you into believing that the fangs aren't there at all times.
He's normally wearing a mouth guard that looks like regular teeth.
Yeah. Then when he fights, that's the time when he can actually like reveal his real teeth, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's a fun gimmick."
If Big John wasn't standing where he is right now, Arlovski would be biting Tim Sylvia's neck.
Exactly.
Big John is.
Fighting needs so much focus that he lets down his mass hypnosis, and everybody can see his true vampire nature.
Okay, so tell me about Tim Sylvia, the psychic vampire.
Okay, so like psychic vampire it only exists in the idea that psychics exist. And that people have psychic energy and auras and all that kind of stuff.
All obviously true.
Mm-hmm. But if you're into that, then there's the idea that there are people out there who are psychic vampires and who can feed off of and take the psychic energy and aura of other people and drain that.
We just saw Tim Sylvia throw what I think was a spinning back kick to the balls.
Yeah.
I think it narrowly missed the intended target. So what we're seeing here, Zane, is a psychic vampire stealing the energy of a traditional vampire. Danny Trejo's there.
Yep.
Oh my God.
And a very young-looking Diego, who looks like a member of NSYNC.
Yeah, Diego with the frosted tips.
Yeah.
Oh. So yeah, we're seeing a psychic vampire fight an actual vampire. That is what we are seeing in this fight.
Through the focus of his jab, just sucking the vampiric energy of Andrei Arlovski out of his decrepit body. Tim Sylvia did take some good shots in that round, by the way. He took some punches very well.
Yeah.
Arlovski is like, why is my hypnosis not working on him?
Arlovski is the Count from the Sesame Street if he only knew how to count 2 for a cross. 2, 2. Oh,
Lord. But yeah, so I mean, I'm figuring these two are just cursed to battle across eternity. Then it's going to be like the Underworld films, like somehow we're here for Andrei Arlovski versus Tim Sylvia 8. Yeah, 2043. They still look the same. Tim Sylvia is 400 pounds now, but
somewhere under an overpass somewhere, Arlovski and Sylvia are going to be battling it out like 20 years from now.
So we meet again, Timothy.
in the mountains of Hungary, they're just dueling on a slope somewhere. I think you can make a great. I know this is also a dead meme by now, but I'm going to make a meme where it's Tim Sylvia and George Roop, and it says, "Don't ever talk to me or my son ever again," because I just realized how much Tim Sylvia looks like George Roop's dad.
Oh, God. That's terrible and true. It is a perfect. I mean, when you see this fight in action, you know, and there's actually like it hasn't been terrible so far. They've at least been, you know, doing some stuff. Tim Sylvia is getting in there, but it is so clear that these two are just like the absolute polar opposites in terms of like gifts and ability, and like everything that comes together to make them is just, it's yin and yang. You have this super athletic, super fleet, chinny as hell, but with really decent technique fighter. And then this huge, clumsy lummox who's just tough as hell.
Like has a functionally well put together like game. He's just like nailed together like the wood of like his game like out behind the barn into this like thing, which like it kind of pretty much works, I guess. It's just like just gonna kind of plod forward and then go jab, cross. Like
he's
vaguely worried
that you assume Matt Hughes and his brother were making out behind the barn. Like Tim Sylvia is Matt Hughes' Frankenstein monster.
He was pounded together behind the barn.
Exactly. Out of all the spare parts in Iowa.
But yeah, he's also this, you know, Tim Sylvia is also obviously like this eternally tragic figure of just like,
oh yeah,
you know, and a nice front kick there of just this, you know, the guy that everyone used to bully the shit out of, all the other guys in the gym, you know, they talked about back in, what's the gym called again? The Hughes, you know, the Hughes like Militich one.
Militich Fighting Systems.
Yeah. You know, they'd all just bully the shit out of Tim Sylvia. He was just, you know, clearly the big slow lummox.
He's the private pile. He's the private pile of Militich Fighting Systems.
That is also who he looks like. Like that is like,
I just imagine Tim Sylvia cleaning his gun in the bathroom. It's the saddest thing I've ever thought of. Put down your weapon, Private Sylvia.
But you know, he kind of battled his way. You know, he kind of just decided he was just going to fight his way to the title, and everyone fucking hated him for it. You know, he won it by knockout. People hated him for it. He won it by decision. Like he was like, "Look, see, guys, it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just that he's chinny. Look, I beat him with my technique, such as it is." And people were like, I fucking hate you, Tim Sylvia. Like,
shut up, Tim.
Yeah, like it was just this guy who was just eternal, like just never kind of. Well, he just kept going like through the fact that like his gym didn't like him and the fans didn't like him to just become like he still holds the record for title defenses.
Yeah. Comical.
Man. Yeah, it is that like it is that story of overcoming where like the loser guy overcomes all the odds to become great, except that nobody then accepts him at all. It's like the most realistic, cynical loser overcomes, and he overcomes, and everybody's like, "You're still a loser."
I mean, the thing is that he's obviously. The thing is, he doesn't cut like the problem with like a lot of the kind of loser guys is that, you know, Hollywood has sort of taught you that the losers are kind of nice guys, but like Tim Sylvia never even really came across as that. Like he comes across as being kind of like,
I mean, he's the kind
of
dude
a lot of the time you're like, wow, I feel for you, but you are genuinely you're like, well, I really feel for you. You really tried your damnedest at this sport. You are kind of genuinely unlikable, though. I can see why people booed you a lot.
He's the Stephen Avery of heavyweight MMA. I got a million parallels to draw for that make Tim Sylvia's life even more depressing than it is.
Yeah, if we could edit these before they went out, we could have like a Connor, like, who is Tim Sylvia, like, reference meter.
Yeah.
Every time another one comes up.
Stephen Avery, Gomer Pyle, Fat George Roop.
Oh, stop. It's terrible because, like, I want to be nice to the guy.
He's a tragically comic character.
He is a tragically comic character. Oh.
Those must be guys from one of those shit awful Spike shows, right? Just the way they looked, they must be from, some jackass knockoff.
He's still beating Andre Arlovski.
Yeah, although they gave Andre Arlovski that round on that live scoring thing, which seems weird. I don't see him winning that at all.
I think it's because like, Sylvia looks so ungainly. I can imagine people not even seeing the shots that he's landing because he looks like he's constantly off balance. And
every
Arlovski
time he gets hit by anything, it looks like it just knocked him out, and then he kept fighting anyway.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
even if it's like a jab to the chest, he's like, and then goes back to fighting.
So I think we've reached the point in this fight where Arlovski has sort of. I think he's losing steam, but also I think he's kind of losing heart because he hasn't knocked Tim Sylvia out with a lot of these punches. And so now we're going to see a very this is going to be the Arlovski that fought Frank Mir for the next 3 rounds, with Tim Sylvia just poking him over and over again. I like the octagon-shaped corner cam here. That's classy.
It is.
Yeah.
Super classy.
I mean, this is the problem. This is why, like, that was actually pretty good from Tim Sylvia there.
Yeah.
Like, that little stepping right cross, that was nice. But the problem is, this is, if you have a super limited game like Arlovski, if someone figures out a way around it, that's the end. Like,
now Tim Sylvia,
that's it.
Now Tim Sylvia just sticks out his left hand and moves backward whenever Arlovski throws a right hand, and it kills Arlovski's game.
Oh man, yeah, we've definitely hit that simmer where, like, you just know the fight is not going to change at all from this point, and you have so much more left of it to watch.
Yeah. What happened to So I know, like, Arlovski. What happened to Sylvia after this fight? Like, because he eventually lost to. Was it actually this fight? So you were, when you said he was, so yeah, and he said he took those, and it's, like, totally believable just to look, like, more impressive.
Yeah,
which is just, like, it's just heartbreaking, really.
Yeah. So he beats Jeff Monson after this, and then he gets just embarrassingly dominated by an old Randy Couture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of begins the slide.
Then, does he then? He has a horrible. Does he have a horrible win against Brandon Vera,
yep.
or was that
he horribly beats Brandon Vera, and then he loses to Big Nog, and then Fedor, and then Ray Mercer?
Oh yeah. That's when he left after Big Nog, because he was. Oh yeah, he was beating the shit out of Big Nog, wasn't he? Am I completely misremembering that? He was kicking the crap out of him.
I'll be honest, I don't really remember the fight.
I don't remember it at all.
Yeah, I think he was like, that was one of the big, like, that was one of the, like, the canaries in the coal mine for Big Nog. Like, Sylvia was beating the shit out of him, and then Nog manages to get a takedown, or even, like, I think Sylvia gets on top of him, and Nog hits the classic, half guard sweep, and then baits him into getting up and chokes him out. But he was getting beaten.
Yeah, I have some memory of this now that you say it.
Tim Sylvia probably could have continued to be a pretty good heavyweight. But I think maybe you could argue that like the Couture fight and then the big Nog fight just sort of broke him, because that was the start of like out of shape, no confidence, uninterested Tim Sylvia. Especially, I mean, I guess the Ray Mercer knockout is the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I mean,
because
everything that happened to him just became more and more embarrassing after this fight.
Yeah.
And okay, so he did he failed his drug test before this fight, actually. So that didn't happen afterward.
Nice.
But yeah, it was a few years.
Oh, Frank Mir obviously as well. Well, Mir was before this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mir beat him back at UFC 48 before he even won the title, I think.
I mean, that's one of the things is like, you know, we often talk about, you know, what happens when, you know, what happens to athletic fighters when they stop, you know, when the athleticism runs out. Like, what happens if you are someone with zero athleticism who relies entirely on their like work ethic and toughness, who stops working? Like, and you know, you see what happened to Tim Sylvia. He got knocked out by Fat Ray Mercer and destroyed in seconds by Fedor. And
it wasn't Mark Wahlberg I was seeing. It was Mark McGrath, who is somebody that I forgot had even existed.
You mean you don't spend every day listening
to
the beautiful music of Sugar Ray?
Yeah.
Oh no.
No, I do not. I forgot that Sugar Ray was a thing, and just seeing his name on screen now reminded me. And man, this fight does suck. This is like, that's my nail in the coffin. Just being reminded that Sugar Ray exists.
I'm glad we got something in there that hurts in that badly. I could really hear the pain.
Round 4.
It's because it was such an unexpected. It was clearly such an unexpected. Like, it's the punches you don't see coming, right?
Exactly.
Like Zane was braced for what the fight would be. He just wasn't ready for the liver shot that was Mark McGrath.
Yeah, I was rolling with all the Tim Sylvia being wooden and mechanical, and Andrei Arlovski continually failing to meet his own expectations. But Mark McGrath was just a sucker punch. That was
you even admirably took a Wayne Newton to the chin.
Hey, I can take Wayne Newton. Wayne Newton I can handle, but Mark McGrath, yeah, that hurts.
I can't forgive Wayne Newton for convincing several generations of people that the phrase Dankeschön is pronounced Dankeschön. Can't forgive him for that.
Yeah, I kind of love him for that. That's massive trolling, and I approve. Oh man, yeah.
Well,
running into that jab again.
Arlovski's doing the same thing as he was, but he's doing them less frequently, and Sylvia has now figured out that he literally just has to back up, and his reach is enough.
What happened to Arlovski after this? Did he had like, because they both did sort of the same thing, right? They had a couple of fights and then went off to try and, because places like Affliction and Strikeforce and so on were paying.
Yeah, he did okay. He went to he knocked out Roy Nelson, and he knocked out Ben Rothwell. He beat Fabricio Verdum. He had a good 5-fight run, I think, before he went on to.
Yeah, what was it? I can't remember. Was it Sylvia or Arlovski that convinced Affliction to pay like a massive amount of money for him?
Probably Sylvia.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who it was now, because it was like one of those guys who was like, and then he got cut and quit or whatever, and what a dumb move. And it was like, no, actually he left for like a huge overly paid contract that was way more money than he ever should have gotten, and was a really smart move.
It could also be Arlovski. Arlovski's the only guy who ever left the UFC that Dana White swears he wasn't upset at him for it. Dana White, I remember, said like he would take Arlovski back in a heartbeat after he went to Affliction and beyond.
Yeah, I don't know. My memory has gotten fuzzy in my old age, so I can't recall these things off the top of my head.
I don't think looking at this fight is helping.
No, it's not.
Tim Sylvia's psychic vampirism is affecting all of us.
It is. I was gonna blame it on being a little hungover today from drinking a lot of sake, but this is probably Tim Sylvia's fault. I woke up with it was like a predestination where I didn't even know I was gonna watch Tim Sylvia fight today, but I woke up with the pain already attached.
Your soul knew it. Yeah, it was on the horizon, even if you didn't see it yet.
Is it an urban legend that for his last fight they had to use a livestock scale for him? Like he was
I have never heard that.
I have heard that, and
because they didn't they didn't medically allow him to fight because he was well over 300 pounds, well over.
I wouldn't doubt it. Like, it's one of those things that I can't. I think it's probably an urban legend, but it sounds so right that I would never dissuade people from believing it.
That's the thing. The weight of the tragedy on Tim Sylvia's career, of the tragic comedy on Tim Sylvia's career, he's the boxer, he's the MMA guy who got knocked out by the boxer, he's the pants-shitting guy, he's the belts in public guy, he's the livestock scale just slots into this kind of.
I mean, the funny thing is
tale of the UFC's most long tenured champion.
And the funny thing is, I think that overall he bought property and did all right out of his career. He didn't end up homeless and fighting to make rent like some guys do. He wasn't nearly as tragic as he could have been.
I hope he's doing all right, man.
Yeah.
I hope that Tim Sylvia is like running a welding shop somewhere and just living comfortably. I don't know, but I hope so, because the man has not had an easy life as a professional fighter. Oh, there he is. Wayne Newton and some very shocked person in the front row.
Get this. I had it right. Tim Sylvia for Affliction pay-per-view where he fought Fedor, $800,000 purse.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Good job, Tim Sylvia.
To lose to Fedor, he got paid $800,000
in 20 seconds.
Yeah,
if that.
Left hook to rear naked choke. I remember it well.
And he just butchers him in the clinch, right? He just dirty boxes him to Yeah, it is over quick.
Oh, I think Fedor, he slaps down a lead hand, leaps in with a left hook. It instantly knocks Sylvia down, and then he jumps on his back and chokes him out.
Yeah.
With the classic Fedor palm-to-palm finish.
And so, yeah, Tim Sylvia didn't actually get cut by the UFC, because that was off his loss to Antonio Rogerio Nogueira. I think he just, he got this massive contract offer that the UFC couldn't match.
Oh, DJ Scribble's here. DJ Scribble, a man I've never heard of, is at UFC 61.
Oh,
so, yeah, this was a time of great popular music.
Mark McGrath.
Sugar Ray, new metal, DJ Scribble.
I'm pretty sure I saw Anthony Kiedis sitting near Mark McGrath.
I mean, they must have just transplanted him into UFC events at this point,
He was actually scheduled for the cards. It was not as a fight, but just he just had his own spot on Joe Silva's Rolodex.
Yeah.
Oh, DJ Scribble got to have an important meal with the Fertitta brothers before this fight. We can see a lot of things that we still see from Arlovski when he doesn't know what to do, which is a lot of posturing.
Mm-hmm.
He tries his best to look like a really good boxer. He'll flash a jab and he'll bounce up and down and move his head, but then he's not getting anything done. Meanwhile, Tim Sylvia,
none of which lands.
Tim Sylvia does no posturing. He just walks forward sort of lazily with his guard up and just picks Arlovski apart with the jab. Oh, boy.
Yeah, I mean, Arlovski's both simultaneously kind of been a kind of encouraging. Well, he's been this kind of Renaissance figure. Because like for newer folk, I don't think it's like people won't remember how much everyone wanted him to retire when he went on that knockout loss streak, because those were ridiculous, brutal KOs. And with one absolute domination in between, with like, where he just got shut out by Bigfoot. Everyone just thought he was completely done. And even onto the regional scene, he just fought like Czech Kongo. He just clinch ground people. But then somehow he came back to the UFC and he managed to put together like the old explosiveness. So like he's simultaneously this like redemptive kind of coming back from the brink storyline, but he's also this guy who never changed. He never got any fucking better. Like
he just didn't lose his speed and power. Yeah. You could argue that like the most important thing for Arlovski, being an unchanging one-handed fighter, is just to be confident. And you could argue that perhaps getting to finally get his revenge against Tim Sylvia is the thing that brought his confidence back, because he had a horrible fight with Ray Lopez, who is a fighter of, no regard whatsoever. He had 3 rounds in which he might have lost if he didn't knock him out in the last minute. And then he fought Travis Fulton, MMA legend.
That fight was trash.
Yeah. And MMA legend.
Was he going to lose that?
Yeah, he wasn't doing well.
Lose that? And then he just head kicked him at like 4:49 of the last.
Yep.
Or like 4:59 of the last round or something ridiculous.
Yep, he wasn't doing well against Travis Fulton, MMA legend and probable member of the alt-right.
Mm-hmm. Or just the regular old, old-fashioned right, unfortunately.
Yeah, well.
But
I think this fight broke Andrei Arlovski. Like, I think this fight is probably what caused him to go on that terrible run, because he was shut out by a guy who was in many ways not as good as him.
Yeah, and Sylvia, like that right hand he's throwing, it's nice and straight and quick and sneaky, and it's just nailing Arlovski in the eye over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Because Arlovski never visibly deteriorates. I mean, you feel like he could just go on forever, and he could just rematch everyone that he's lost once they get old enough.
Yeah,
like it worked for Bigfoot, and Tim. Like maybe you can just wait until like Stipe Miocic is going to be like, 38 or something, and you're like, just going to hobble out to the ring and just get KO'd by one giant right hand.
Well, because Arlovski's he doesn't age, as we've noted. He's already, of course, at the point of this fight, he's probably at least 2 centuries old. So, he's just in perpetuity having the same vulnerabilities, the same strength.
Yeah,
he's just just waiting for somebody to come out and stake him in the cage. Right. He just explodes into like this dusty fireball.
If Wesley Snipes ever gets that MMA career,
as long as he never fights Curtis Blades, right? He just throws like the thing at him, and Arlovski explodes, and he's just like, some motherfucker's always trying to ice skate uphill.
I would spend Curtis Blades' actual money if he gets to fight Arlovski and says that and knocks him out.
I would love that. Just to say the Blade line, to say one of the worst one-liners in movie history.
Apparently, he totally made it up, right?
Yeah.
There's some some guy just said it like backstage, and then Wesley Snipes was like, "I gotta add that into this film." Yeah,
it's over. We made it.
God,
good job, everyone.
Like, for a round and a half, that was a totally fine fight. And then it was just the slowest, most grindiest thing.
Yeah. It was also interesting in that it was a, well before its time, a striking match that took place at a fairly close range. Like a lot of a lot of that fight was spent just on the end of jab range. We didn't really see much of that until like Lawler Hendricks coming
Where
back.
can I get one of those? Where can I get one of those
Maniac shirts? I bet if you are willing to put up with the rest of his weirdness, you could probably talk Pat Miletich into sending you one out of his box that's in his basement.
Also a member of the alt-right. Almost certainly.
Here we go.
I did enjoy Pat Miletich's commentary, though.
Yeah, I think he's a good commentator.
Like everybody in the MMA sphere, I find it's best if you just kind of take them at the face value of whatever they're presenting on TV and then just hope that they're not like a child predator outside of...
Yeah. Basically all you can really hope for.
You got to lower your bar for acceptable behavior, right? Like as long as Josh Thompson isn't a child predator, I can ignore the fact that he thinks that gay marriage is tantamount to having sex with animals.
Yeah, exactly. Like at some point you've just got to be like, well, I'm paying to watch, I'm paying money to watch dudes fist fight each other in a cage for money. How good of people do they really need to be?
Yeah.
So
Randy Couture, who will beat Tim Sylvia like a year after this fight, is interviewing him in the cage.
I know.
He's just thinking like, man.
He's thinking, this is the kind of fight where a guy like Randy Couture, he's just standing there going like, I can take this dude.
Yeah.
He watched
any day of the week.
The fact that he called this fight is probably what made him come back. He was like, holy shit, I can do that. Here we go. Some highlights. Sponsored by Mickey's.
Oh man, it's fun to watch this highlight. Now pretend that Tim Sylvia is actually like 5'11" and looks like that.
Like, let's give Tim Sylvia to his credit. There's none of that kind of dissonance that you get with Chet Jordan and Sean Kongo. Like, if you were like, how's this dude gonna fight? Like this spindly-legged dad bod, like dude, and you'd be like, oh yeah, that is exactly how that guy would fight. Like, I'm glad that he's like,
really are not selling anybody false at all.
No.
Dan Kelly probably saw this fight and is like, man, that's the most inspiring thing I've ever seen in my life.
I told you guys how I saw. I saw you guys how I saw I was watching like Dan Kelly and Rashad with like my flatmate after the because I recorded and watched it the next day, and she like came in and sat down and watched it, and she was like, when they were coming out to the cage, she was just like, this happened. That poor old man's gonna get killed. I was just like, no. Wait a sec. Just like, watch. This is Dan Kelly. Meanwhile, Rashad's taking off his shirt and he's like, absurdly ripped, like the most ripped he has ever been.
Yeah.
And Dan Kelly is like slowly trying to figure out how to remove clothing without bending any of his joints.
Dan Kelly's shoulders are too stiff to take off his shirt without help. Oh boy.
I'm so happy that Dan Kelly won that fight. I didn't think he would. I actually don't even think he did. When I watched it, I feel like Rashad may have actually squeaked it out, but I am so happy Dan Kelly got the win in that. Like, that just makes me so pleased.
Was he totally absent for this event?
I don't know.
Looks like it.
Looks like it was just Randy Couture and Mike Goldberg.
I have turned my feed off because at this point I don't need to see highlights of the next 10 minutes of highlights of the rest of the evening's action.
Mm.
Although I feel like I probably inadvertently missed some good comedy doing so.
Yeah, we got to see Jeff Monson set up his shot at Tim Sylvia's title with a very early 2000s MMA style knockout.
Now shuffled off his UFC fighting coil to go watch dudes get fucked for free in Russia. There we go.
Yeah. One of the greatest MMA promos ever.
Oh, absolutely. If anybody ever tells you that they have the greatest MMA promo to show you ever, you know it's gonna be that one. Like that is always the crowning achievement of MMA dudes cutting a promo.
You've got Do You Want to Get Fucked for Free? You've got I Want to Fuck Chuck. That's a classic. But also before this fight is probably when we got Andre Arlovski asking Tim Sylvia how tastes his big pee-pee.
Tastes my pee-pee.
Yes.
I have one question for you, Tim. How tastes my big pee-pee? Possibly the greatest promo ever.
Oh.
Well, it's accomplished its goal, this fight. It's sucked all the energy out of us. I was really planning on going to the gym after this. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make it.
That's right. Any ability to function has been drained from our soul. So on that note, before we just let this drag us into the lowest depths possible, you can find me on Twitter at @TheZaneSimon. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush. That's BUSCH. You can find Phil on Twitter at EvilGregJackson, just like the other Greg Jackson, but evil. And you can find all three of us over on BloodyElbow.com in our various roles. Give us a like over on YouTube. That's the thumbs up thing down there. That helps us a bunch. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM. That's where you get all the rest of our Bloody Elbow shows, interviews, analysis, all that good stuff that we're known for. We will be back next week for a UFC event, believe it or fucking not.
A good one, too.
Yeah, which one is it? It's the
UFC 210, Cormier versus Johnson 2.
UFC 210, yeah, Cormier versus Johnson 2. So we'll have If I Did It, Care Don't Care, Vivisection, Heavy Hands, Knuckle Up, all our shows, getting ready for that. I will be back later this afternoon with a vivisection for Bellator 175 this weekend. So you can all catch me then, and until then, I will see you all next time.